Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today it's a bit of a departure from the norm. We've got to talk about all of this delay chatter, right? We've got to be real with it and try to work out why is it happening, will there be a delay, and should there be a delay? Now I'm going to be straight up with you, right? That question, will Shadowlands be delayed? I think the answer is blindingly obvious. No. Now, I also do think that a delay would probably be good, that it would give more time to actually polish up the game, and that would be positive, but also, well, you know, Blizzard, who are they beholden to? Blizzard Entertainment and Activision Publishing are both business units of Activision Blizzard, the actual parent corp, and I do not think that Activision Blizzard will allow them to shift this date at all. I think that's pretty clear. Now, why are people talking about this delay and thinking it might be needed? Well, many people, me included, and especially beta testers of Shadowlands, think that Shadowlands needs a delay. And what I'm going to do in today's video is basically explore that topic and why. We'll talk about more in-game stuff in a little bit, but first I want to talk about the most direct evidence that we have, and a burning question for many people. Where is Prepatch? What is Prepatch? And what is up with Blizzard's really strange and ambiguous communications about it? The first thing to tackle is the Prepatch Split. This is totally new, they've never done it before. So Blizzard are actually splitting Prepatch into two parts. Part 1 is what you would think of as the Shadowlands Prepatch. Part 2 is the pre-expansion patch. So the first patch is what will have, you know, the actual main Prepatch content, you know, the event and all that stuff. But the second one will actually bring a whole bunch of changes that are needed before Shadowlands goes live. Now, Ian Hazacostas, the game director of WoW, did explain this. He said, this approach allows us to get features like character customization options and the streamlined leveling experience into your hands sooner in 9.0.1, while allowing the team the maximum possible time to keep polishing the level 51 through 60 experience, which of course is Shadowlands, and that is patch 9.0.2. So yes, this is something that's never happened before. Blizzard have never needed to actually split up that pre-patch, and the reason they've done that is obvious. It is to give them more time to actually polish and bug fix and iterate on Shadowlands core content. That, you know, actual 50+ experience that we all, you know, do actually want to play. Now, them taking extra time is a good thing. I'll also say, good heavens, they need it. You'll see that later in this video. They need all the time they can get. But it is, I think, the fact that, yeah, it seems like they need that time. The fact that they need it, well, you know, that's bad, right? That's worrying. That implies things are not in a great state. And they're not. You'll soon see why. But yes, the team feels that they need that extra 2 to 3 weeks of work to get Shadowlands to a shippable state. Now, before we actually dive into Shadowlands and the state of it, let's talk about Prepatch. Where is it? We'll kick this segment off by examining some dates. Legion Prepatch was July 19th, the expansion launched 6 weeks later on August 30th. 42 days was the duration of Legion Prepatch. BFA Prepatch was July 17th. The expansion was 1 month later-ish, August 14th. And that means that the BFA Prepatch lasted 28 days in total. Now, Shadowlands Prepatch has already missed what you would call its sort of latest normal release date, right? It's later than BFA's was relative to launch. We would have expected, by the way, September 29th. So that does mean that the soonest possible date for a Shadowlands Prepatch is actually the 6th of October. And if it was the 6th of October, then that would give us a 21-day Prepatch. So pretty much half the length of Legion's one. Now, if things are even worse and we end up having a Prepatch that comes out on the 11th of October, then that would actually just be a 16-day long Prepatch. That would essentially be enough time for Blizzard to do the in-game event, but I mean, that would be it. They would not have any extra time. Now, that obviously would not be particularly ideal because they did develop all of that pre-patch content, obviously, with the hope that we'd be playing it and enjoying it for a decent amount of time. The other thing here is that Blizzard, well, they clearly do not know when the pre-patch is going to come out. They did not know last week with their end of season post, right? They always make a forum post saying when the end of the Mythic Plus and PvP season is. That's really important for those players so they know when to wrap up all of their goals. And they did that, but that post was just like all the other ones that we get, but it didn't have a date and it just said they'd be ending soon. Then, somebody actually tweeted them yesterday, Monday, about where the pre-patch was, and it was really weird. The World of Warcraft Twitter account replied back basically saying, done when it's ready, soon TM, and then that was deleted. That tweet was deleted. Like, I do have a screenshot of it, but it went away. All of this is a bit strange. It points towards things being just a bit closer, sort of closer to the wire, right, than they were in previous expansions. And that is a little bit worrying. In the past, we had more prompt communication on these things, there was less ambiguity, and it all just seemed a lot more smooth and shipshape. Whereas here, it seems like there's just a lot of mystery. And much of that mystery is captured in the release candidate situation, where the pre-patch was marked on PTR as being a release candidate, and then suddenly it was no longer marked as being a release candidate, and now it's back to being a release candidate, and they have just planned a stress test that happens on the 30th. And again, that's a weird flip-flop, right? I mean, how is it a release candidate and then not? What were the problems that they found? The fact that they feel they need to do stress testing that is so close to when the expected launch of this would be is something that is a bit spooky. And again, do remember that while they're doing things like this stress test, that's already like the time where the pre-patch would have been out by the modern standards set by Legion and BFA. So all of this essentially points to a lot of mystery, a lot of confusion, us not really knowing what's on, and it being pretty clear that behind the scenes, it's a tricky situation for Blizzard. So that's what we know about the pre-patch stuff, and that all makes us think that, it's not all shipshape. So because of that, let's talk about the state of Shadowlands itself, including some more broad topics and also diving into some of the weird things that are going on in beta, because some of them are really weird and really not in the state they should be, considering we're like 4 weeks away from launch. I'm going to kick this off with discussion of the ripcord. Now, this is not me being pro-ripcord or anti-ripcord, but it is a situation where people have been talking about the coupling of player power and Covenant choice since BlizzCon 2019, when Shadowlands was actually announced. Now, beta iteration slowed down tremendously. There was just these sort of black holes of class and Covenant iteration that happened. The ripcord, I think it was clearly impossible, and I think it's also very clear that the ripcord decision is actually one that was made pretty damn late in the day. Like, the decision to totally abandon the idea of doing any form of ripcord, I think that was a late decision. You see, Ian toyed around with the idea of that being a possibility during the interview with Preach. So that this is something that could happen, that was clearly still on the table as a plan that Blizzard could implement as of, I think it was the 17th of July this year. Now, if you fast forward from the 17th of July to the 9th of September, well, the 9th of September is when Ian made that big blog post that made it very clear that it would not happen. Now, that blog post did say that it would be a lot of effort to change it, and that if they thought it was the right thing to do, they would embrace all of the extra work that would be needed, right, to pull that ripcord. Well, here's the thing. When was that decision made? That's what I've got to wonder here. How close was the making of that decision to Ian's blog post? Right now, things feel really quite rushed. It seems to me that, most beta players who are actually thinking about this issue, and I do say this quite confidently, are expecting a lot of, let's just say, live tuning of Covenant abilities. They've done a pass recently, but it's really still in a pretty messy situation, especially when you think about the Soulbind. So a ripcord, I think, would have been impossible based on the timing of Ian's communications. I think that a ripcord would have been impossible. The easier option would probably just for them have been to try to balance what they've got, and we're now at a stage where we're really close to release. The balance is still not there, and there is still a lot of issues that are going to stem from this. So my point here is this whole situation was messy. I think if they had have made this decision earlier, then they would have had more time to actually balance things, So if they decided, no, we're not going to pull that ripcord, if they had have decided that, in June or May, then maybe they would have had more time to have fully committed to that design. But right now, the beta iteration on balance and Covenant abilities didn't happen when it should have happened. This should have been happening in April, May, June, and a little bit was happening, but a lot still needs to be done, and the largest changes have been fairly recently, and the fact that that's happening so close to release is just scary. So I do think that them going with a design that is inherently very hard to balance, and then maybe flip-flopping on some aspects of that, and not doing enough iteration in those abilities early enough, I think that has all just contributed to a situation where a lot of design time has been taken, and we're now very close to release, and we're essentially having a major part of the new expansion not being where it needs to be in terms of balance, and in some cases in terms of design. And then also, there is the 7-day conduit lock that has been a humongous point of player feedback for, well, basically as soon as they announced it, and it still is essentially radio silence from Blizzard as to just any response to people's feedback on the specifics of, concerns about the 7-day conduit lockout. So again, that just sort of says to me that in a systems level, they're not quite there yet, and it's just all this stuff. This should have been done months ago, right? Right now, we should just be polishing, fixing some, final annoying bugs, and just getting that smooth launch experience. We're nowhere near there. Like, when you go onto Shadowlands right now, it feels like the start of beta in terms of where systems are, not the end. And in terms of the conduits and the Covenant abilities, the state of them, that's where we're at, and that's not where we need to be, especially at this very soon point in time to expansion launch. Then next, the Maw. This is a big issue. So the Maw was hyped up quite a bit. It was this idea of, basically a patch zone that would actually ship with Shadowlands and have a bunch of its own cool, new, unique mechanics. It all sounded pretty cool. And our first jaunt of it was decent, right? We looked in there and we were pretty excited because we sort of thought it had strong fundamentals and could be brought into a really good place with iteration. Where was the iteration? Because the Maw has barely been updated since we first looked at it at the very start of beta. Their whole direction of having no mount when you're in the Maw, that made sense when we thought that there'd be a lot more there and it would be a lot more dense. But right now, the Maw is just really underdeveloped. Imagine Timeless Isles, but just some mobs and rares, but not really that special sauce. It's not there. The iteration has not happened. The Maw feels unfinished. And considering how similar it is to its very first version in beta, I would say that as compared to maybe its original and maybe even a cut down version of its design document, I've got to imagine it is unfinished. And that, again, is worrying. And when people think, does Shadowlands need to be delayed? I think many of them who are beta testers go into the Maw and just see this weird, sort of under-designed, empty-ish feeling sort of slice of the game. And they think, yeah, maybe this should have had a later release date because this clearly is not done. And I'd also say this is actually worse of a problem than ever because now you grind for random conduits and sockets to put onto your gear in the Maw. That's the only place to get Stygia. So you're going to be spending a lot of time in the Maw getting this Stygia. It's a core thing you're actually going to need for your character progression, and the Maw is really underdeveloped. So if people feel like they need to do a bunch of time in the Maw, it's not going to be good for how the gameplay experience of this is on launch. It's imagine Echoes of Nyalotha, but they're just a way, way worse system. Right now, when we go there, it's so inconsistent. Sometimes we see world quests on the map, sometimes we don't. Stygia drops have been very inconsistent from mobs. They do appear to be there from rares, but the thing is, it's just so clearly bare and unfinished feeling, and the thing is that Blizzard have not explained their intent. They have not done that. So again, this is a zone we were all a bit worried about as time went on, that now is an even more important part of your character's progression, and we just don't really know where it's at, where it's supposed to be, and if there's going to be any changes. That is a big point of worry, and for a lot of people who could be affected by something like this, they're probably thinking, yes, a delay would help in getting this thing right, and that would make the game better, and I think that's why you see a lot of those people expecting or hoping or advocating for some form of delay in this expansion. Then leveling is the next thing to talk about, and you would have thought that this would have been in a great state, considering Bastion was there in day one. No, leveling's in a big mess. Threads of Fate, I've already done my video on that, so Threads of Fate. I think it's a great idea with a lot of promise. It is not there. The XP stuff doesn't make sense. The flow is confusing. When when non-test oriented players get that, they're going to be confused. That is a problem. Now, let's get into some of the level gating and the XP rate stuff. So there's a lot of confusion over level gating. People seemingly need to hit a minimum level before they're eligible for the next zone's breadcrumb quest. Now, people are then experiencing that they're not actually getting enough XP from doing zones to hit those minimum levels, so they have this really weird fragmented experience. And there's people on the beta forum who are reporting that they're doing lore master runs and finishing it at like level 58, 59, and are essentially running out of XP. To the point where maybe they're going to need to do dungeons or, some extra things like that on top to fill their XP. Now, there's a deeper problem there because sometimes quests can actually turn green and give you less XP. Now, the thing is, Blizzard have communicated zero intent of any of this stuff post the XP nerf that they did. Now, it almost seems like the XP nerf they did from, what you were getting 50 through 60 was something that they did because they were just like, well, leveling, it's too fast. We need to slow it down a little bit. But it seems like they did that rather blindly and just have not adjusted other things since, meaning that it's an experience that I think for a lot of people is going to be fragmented and confusing and not work that well, which again is super worrying. I mean, a wild example is you can do the zones wrong. Like, if you do the campaign in Bastion, but don't do the side quests, and then get to maybe level 56 and run out of XP and decide to go back to Bastion, well, people are reporting that then some of those side quests are green for them, right? You get orange quests, yellow quests, and green ones whenever you over-level them. And you wouldn't have seen this much if you've been playing the game recently, of course, because the scaling has been happening everywhere, which is scale the quests, but that's not something that's really in operation for the 10 through 60 experience. So people are actually saying, they're reporting that they're getting these green quests. That is very, very bizarre. I mean, why is this just not a case of you're doing the zones in that order, but the scaling is just in operation? Because, of course, the scaling works in Threads of Fate. So why are there problems when you're doing the regular questing flow? Again, we shouldn't be having this discussion so close to launch. And to give you some ideas of what people are experiencing here, there's reports of people being around level 55 when they're finishing the Maldraxxus quests, but then getting nowhere to go, right? What's supposed to happen is that the gate of the Primus will open for them. That happens at level 56. People are not actually hitting level 56 by the time they actually get to that stage, and that just means they're not getting progression. Now, the people who do hit level 56 plus are often using War Mode for that XP boost. Again, there's just leveling flow problems on beta. They are here in the regular 50 through 60 questing. They are there in the Threads of Fate questing as well, as I reported on in our most recent video. And this should not be happening so quick. This should not be happening so, not quick, so close before launch. Right? It's really, really weird. And if you look at the questing forums for the beta, right, the feedback forums, it's essentially unanimous over there from all the testers who are making posts that it's just not where it needs to be, that the XP tuning is not right. That is essentially a unanimous thing. Again, we're 3.5 weeks away from launch, right? Maybe 4 weeks, whatever. But the thing is, it's not going to finish developing the game on Monday night and ship it on Tuesday. There's probably some sort of hard date, maybe a week before, where there's a bunch of validation stuff that needs to be done, which then just does make you think there's probably only realistically for dev time 2 or 3 weeks left in this thing. Right? It's scary that we're still talking about issues like this. There's then just sometimes oddities. I mean, the Flight Master experience in Threads of Fate is something I remember being very confusing because basically you would get the quest to go to a zone and you'd go to the Flight Master and he would have dialogue options that sometimes weren't for the zone that you were going to. And in one case for me, the zone I was going to wasn't a dialogue option, which meant that I had to, manually select the flight point. And that's just the sort of thing where no UI designer would make it like that. It's a confusing flow. It's fine for an experienced player, but it's unpolished. And you just wonder, why is that unpolished stuff here? And I suppose another thing is, we do not know Blizzard's intent. This is the worrying thing for me. The Maw, Threads of Fate's actual, flow and implementation. Quest flow. We don't know. The Maw Stygia stuff. What sort of stuff is supposed to be in the Maw? We just don't know what their intent is. They've not told us. Same goes with just so many little elements of this where the communication has not been great as time has went on. Another thing is Covenants and Soulbinds. There are bugs and things that are existing that are really hampering testing right now, which is not great, and the system itself pretty much looks unbalanceable. I mean, this is a massive boon for raid bots, bottom line, but seriously, a lot of this stuff, it's not even fun stuff. It's selecting between a bunch of fluff and just trying to work out which one's mathematically the best, because in many cases, there's not really much fun there. If the fluff was just fun, crazy little side things, maybe those soulbinds and conduits could be cool, but it's often not really like that. So there's just this situation as well, where the conduit system feels, or the conduit and soulbind system feels like it needs a lot of polish, a lot of iteration, and a lot of work. That's not something that we should be saying so close to launch. Moving on to some miscellaneous things, I mean, the Night Fae Covenant campaign, that's had progression, and still has, progression-stopping bugs in it. Why is that a thing so close to launch? I mean, we actually had a fun, this was a Mac OS bug in one of our editing rigs today, where we logged in, we got a loading screen after we took a flight point to another destination in the zone we were in. Then we appeared at our destination after the loading screen. We experienced about 1 frame every 2 seconds, so a 0.5 FPS for about 30 seconds. Then the entire screen went red, and then it worked for a little bit, and then that just kept on happening until we force quitted. So I guess this is an issue with maybe the Metal renderer, which is like the macOS graphics API. But yeah, I mean, if you're using a Mac and you want to play WoW, I don't know if Shadowlands will be acceptable. We still have a big issue right now. Another thing people I've seen reporting, Pandarans for the Alliance, right? When you go to Stormwind to sign up, Anduin's not there. Turalian is there, but the quest hasn't been updated, which means you're just stuck. You can't pledge yourself to the Alliance, so you're still a weird neutral character. And there's just a lot of little quest and progression bugs just sort of littered throughout the situation. And again, it's we're very, very close to launch. This is spooky. This feels like very early beta, not very late beta. And look, I could basically just go through the beta tester forums till the cows come home on so many of these things. If you're skeptical, then you probably, the skeptical people, the sort of defend everything to the death people, they're not watching this video, right? They've sort of factored off very early in it, but go to the beta forums. Look for yourself is what I'll say. It is not a great situation. What I'd say here, overall, is KISS. Keep it simple, stupid, right? It's an axiom in so many different industries and life and lines of work, and it really is something that applies here. They have just went with so many, inherently very hard to do systems, right? Actually getting Covenants in a way that all that balance is going to happen and be in a great state. The same goes for the Soulbinds and for the Conduits. I mean, there's some of the conduits, they're giving you a percentage increase in the damage of a certain spell. That basically just means, though, that for that spell, you can't tune it. You just can't tune the spell default and then have a conduit that could be anything from 10 to 25% more damage for that spell, and then expect that to scale in a way with increasing gear and different legendaries and stuff that means there'll be balance. This stuff is so hard to balance. They have set themselves up for failure here. And I think what that means is that so much of their design time goes into quashing the results of the overcomplicated systems that they try to put into this game. And that's not ideal. And that's just so much of what I see here. I mean, it's just worrying. Broad strokes, look, the Shadowlands content, the zones, I don't like Maldraxxus, I'll be real, but the other 3 are really quite good, right? So it's got these really nice zones. Torghast, you saw our video on that. Torghast is great. I love Torghast. Big Torghast fanboy. So that's all really good. Getting the cosmetic progression of your Covenants. This is all stuff that is really great and exciting, and I just think if this expansion had 1 or 2 more months to sort of iterate in these designs and to actually get it so that when it comes out, it's smooth and it just works and there's no weird anti-patterns that are annoying players and actually get to play the game, then this would be really great. But right now, I'm worried we'll be in some sort of situation where this expansion just has significant issues on day 1 because it was pushed out too early. Again, I wouldn't say by the WoW dev team, I would say by the people who set the dates for the WoW dev team. And that's just worrying to me because you incur technical debt. Doing something right first time is better than doing it in a sort of rushed way and then having to fix it after the fact. that's just, it's a technical debt, right? If you're a programmer or, you're working in just so many different teams, technical debt's a thing you will have experienced in your job. So it's an important concept to understand. My worry here is that the amount of debt that they will incur by shipping this expansion in the way that they're going to ship it will hurt the rest of the expansion because it'll put them in the back foot. Look at Legion. I mean, it had its issues. It really did at launch, yes. A lot of those were these sort of design issues, right? The legendaries and stuff like that. But broad strokes, it was a smooth launch. They had a pretty robust content catalog. And there you go, right? It just kind of went out and did pretty well. And then you look at BFA. BFA launch was a bit of a mess. I think we can all admit that. It had many different design problems. Patch 8.1 was really late as compared to patch 7.1. And, 8.1 tried to fix a whole bunch of things and to just make the progression feel a lot better. Then patch 8.2 was, again, trying to fix the problems of the past by adding in these big new systems. And then you look at Nyalotha, which had really not that much content. They had to reuse old zones. It really wasn't that great. Horrific Visions, I think, pretty awesome though, so thumbs up to whoever did that. And a raid that I did enjoy quite a bit as well, but it wasn't a big patch, didn't set the world on fire. And it itself, because they went overambitious with corruptions, had so many long-lasting problems for the game. And I just think that BFA was so set on the back foot because of all those things. Look at Warlords of Draenor. I mean, it had one major patch. 8.1 was, or 6.1 even, was like, the Instagram patch, whatever that everyone memes on. And then you had the Fury of Hellfire patch, and then that was it, right? Like, that was in terms of patch content, the shortest WoW expansion we've ever had. And I think that happened because they put all of their everything into Garrisons. Garrisons didn't work out. Then they were on the back foot, and they just had to cut and run with that expansion. I'm really worried with Shadowlands that they're just going to be in the back foot, and that they would be in the back foot because they're just going to have to go live with a bunch of, I guess, unsolved problems, and the players are going to experience that. And, the last thing that I want is BFA 2. I do not want that. I want WoW to be in a great sort of healthy state, where the prevailing sort of narrative is not people talking about being annoyed at overcomplicated systems and stuff not working and balance being a mess and there not being enough content. I want WoW to be just a really great game that we all can log in and enjoy with no ifs, ands, or buts. It's like not a situation where we're logging in and we're enjoying playing dungeons with our friends in spite of being annoyed at Azerite and essences and gear, all of that stuff. And Shadowlands could be there, right? It really could be with what they've done, removing the Titan forging and making gear matter more. There's so many elements of Shadowlands design that I really, really do appreciate. But it's just that thing where at the same time, that's true, but Shadowlands is more friendly to people playing multiple characters, with multiple classes, than it is to playing one character with two specs, where you want to play both of them. That's a little bit wild. There's just all this weird stuff going on. It just feels like it is not time to launch this expansion in 3 weeks, unless they pull an absolute miracle. But then the thing is, I mean, no matter what happens, there's going to be human cost to this. Like, crunch. Crunch happens, right? We all know this. And they're going to be crunching to hell. And, like, that the WoW devs are, putting in a lot of hours, a lot of hours. And I've heard the old story of people just spending a lot of time at the campus and stuff like that. And you know what? It's like it's just not a long-term sustainable way to actually make a game really good, though, is it? Like, crunch is always down to bad management and bad timelines and things like that. So no matter what, there's going to be crazy crunch for the next few weeks to get this thing out. And then the sad thing is, if the expansion does get delayed by 2 months, it'll probably just be 2 months more crunch for, for all the stuff. So there's that side there where for the developers, no matter what, this is a pretty sad situation that I'm sure they don't want to be in. But it's just that thing where, they're in a situation where they're developing this World of Warcraft expansion in very unprecedented times. Battle for Azeroth put them in the back foot. It meant they could no longer hit, the sort of August release window of WoW expansions that we had for Legion and BFA. It's now a bit later. It seems like, the higher-ups won't give them more time, even if they really do need that time. And we're just stuck in this sort of unfortunate situation. So, to loop back to the top of this video, will Shadowlands be delayed? No. I do not think so. I'd be highly surprised. I think that based purely on the quality of the game and the long-term health of the game, I think it should be delayed. And I do expect a sort of 2-3 week beta, live beta, before, the raids come out and stuff, where there's just a lot of issues and Blizzard are trying to fix things. And then when Heroic comes out, I imagine they will have a pretty insane set of changes right in before Mythic, because I think a lot of issues are going to be found out. Just look at the beta forums, right? If you don't believe me, look at the beta forums. You can see for yourself. There's so many people, like, it's so weird. They don't trust, it's as if they don't trust the beta testers are not lying, right? It's like they're such diehard corporate cultists that they refuse to believe that anything could be going wrong with the IP that they love. But the thing is, the people who are actually providing this feedback on the beta, they're doing that so that those bugs can be fixed, so the problems can be solved, so that the IP that people love can actually be in a better situation, a better state. So that's why I just say, read the beta forums and, man, it's rough. That's basically all I've got in this video. I saw this sort of topic floating around. I wanted to address it directly. And I suppose there we go. The video's done. That's what I've done. What do you think about the situation? If you're a beta tester, how are you in all this? I don't know. Let me know down below. I'm like half excited, half very, very nervous and worried, I suppose, in this. Because I know that even if balance is wacky, I can still go to Torghast with my friends, go up the twisting corridors, and have a lot of fun. And I can still, go to a Mythic Plus, and because I'm doing it in a pre-made, I'm not going to have, balance-related issues or being accepted into the group sort of issues. But I know for a lot of people, they're going to experience issues with how all this stuff is shaking out. So I think what I'm going to say is this. Shadowlands is probably going to be ropey at the start. Get a damn guild. Try to play with people. If you're playing with a good group of people, then a bunch of the problems that could arise in this expansion will impact you less. And even if they do, at least you'll have some friends that you can sort of have a laugh with the whole thing about with. Anyway, that's it for me. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think. I'll see you next time.